Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. During the first days of July 1864, citizens in and about Frederick, Maryland, steeled themselves for the imminent arrival of Confederate invaders. The region remained on high alert as newspapers reported the largely unopposed advance of Lieutenant General Jubal Early's corps through Virginia's Shenandoah Valley into West Virginia. Early's 15,000 veterans brushed off small garrisons of federal troops as they raided towns in their path. The Union rushed forces to meet Early's aggression. In Baltimore, Major General Lew Wallace, commanding the Middle Department and the 7th Corps, mustered about 2,300 effectives and ordered them towards Frederick. In Virginia, General in Chief Ulysses S. Grant dispatched about 4,000 men of the Army of the Potomac's battle hardened 6th Corps from the fighting in the environments of Petersburg and Richmond. For one of those 6th Corps regiments, the 14th New Jersey Infantry, the hurried movement to Frederick marked a return to familiar territory and a homecoming of sorts, for these Jersey men were popularly known as the Monocacy Regiment. That nickname came as the result of the regiment's first deployment 2 years earlier to guard railroad bridges and other points in the vicinity of the junction along the Monocacy River, just a few miles due south of Frederick. The officers' cadre of the 14th included the man pictured here, Chauncey Harris, a peacetime miller from Elizabeth, New Jersey, who had recently been widowed. He marked his 34th birthday, August 26th, 1862, by mustering into the 14th as captain of Company C. The regiment left the Garden State just days later for Monocacy Junction, which lay in the path of General Robert E. Lee's first invasion of the North, which of course culminated at the Battle of Antietam. The 14th saw little action during what became known as the Maryland Campaign and remained at Monocacy Junction for the next 9 months. During this time, the Jersey men forged close and cherished relationships with the Marylanders. Flash forward to July 1863. Harris and the rest of the 14th joined the Army of the Potomac and pursued Lee's army during the retreat following its loss at the Battle of Gettysburg, which ended the second Northern invasion by the Confederates. The 14th went on to participate in the Bristol, Mine Run, Overland, and Petersburg campaigns. Harris survived all the battles, skirmishes, and other operations, building his abilities along the way as a trusted and respected company commander. Then, on July 5th, 1864, came new orders to return to Monocacy Junction to stop Jubal Early and his Confederates. The 14th and its brigade and another brigade in the 3rd Division of the 6th Corps moved to City Point the next day and traveled by transport up to Baltimore and then by railroad to its destination in Frederick. The division, commanded by seasoned veteran and talented West Pointer Major General James Ricketts, arrived at Frederick on July 8th. The return of the Monocacy Regiment and other reinforcements bolstered the confidence of the civilian population. One newspaper reported, "With such veterans, we fear the rebel host no longer." The same sentiment might have been felt by the troops sent by Major General Wallace, many of whom were green and inexperienced. The reunion and rekindling of friendships between the 14th and the Marylanders ended the next morning, interrupted by advancing Confederates. What happened next forever ended many friendships. The regimental historian of the 14th New Jersey described the engagement, quote, "At 9 o'clock, the enemy's advanced skirmishers made their appearance. Our skirmishers had crossed the river and advanced with promptness to meet them. After a short time, it was found impossible to withstand the enemy as they outnumbered us 6 to 1. Our skirmishers were driven back across the river, and the battle began. The enemy opening with several pieces of artillery. The battle raged terribly for 8 long hours. The enemy crossed the river, driving our men steadily back and coming up in 4 lines of battle. End quote. That historian continued, quote, our little band of 5,000 men fought as if everything depended upon the issue, several times driving the enemy back, strewing the ground with rebel dead, end quote. The Confederates, meanwhile, gave as good as they got, sending a hot hail of lead bullets, shot and shell into the ranks of the Jersey men, dropping them in the ranks by the score and taking a fearful toll on the officers, leaving immediate and alarming gaps in the chain of command that could not easily be filled. Attacks and counterattacks consumed hours of fighting as drifts of gun smoke obscured the sun as it rose into the afternoon sky. Rebel fire wounded the 14th Lieutenant Colonel and the adjutant. By 2 o'clock, senior leadership of the regiment had been eliminated, and captains commanded the remnants of the 14th. Bullets came fast and furious now. The Confederates picked off the captains as seniority passed from one to the next. Following one counterattack by the Jersey boys, a leaden missile tore into the leg of Captain James Conover, and it proved mortal. Command of the regiment now fell to Chauncey Harris, the senior captain of the 3 officers still standing. Harris led the men forward into what was rapidly disintegrating into a last stand. His tenure as commander ended just as the others did, by a bullet. He could not escape the inescapable. A gunshot tore into his left chest. Comrades assisted him into an ambulance where a second bullet slammed into his right knee. Meanwhile, the captain who replaced Harris suffered a death blow just moments later, leaving command to the last captain on the field, Jacob Janeway. Shortly after he took command, a bullet hit him in the shoulder. Without commanders and depleted to less than 100 men, its color guard shot down, unit integrity compromised. The survivors of the 14th had to abandon the field. The regiment historian revealed the outcome. Quote, at 4 o'clock, the order was given to fall back, which was done in order, the men disputing every inch of ground. We had but 4 pieces of artillery, and that without ammunition. The enemy poured grape and canister into our retreating columns, mowing down the men like grass. More than 1/2 of the division were killed and wounded. Several hid in the woods and were captured the next day. It was now every man for himself. Knapsacks, haversacks, and even canteens were thrown away. End quote. Though the Battle of the Monocacy ended in defeat for Union arms, the 8-hour clash slowed the progress of Early's corps. By the time the Confederates resumed their march towards Washington, D.C., Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant had rushed additional reinforcements. The troops arrived during the evening of July 11th and fanned out to man the city's defenses in time to repulse Early's advance on July 12th. Thus, the Battle of the Monocacy also became known as the battle that saved Washington, D.C. And it is fair to state that on that day, the 14th New Jersey Infantry's nickname, the Monocacy Regiment, also became its nom de guerre. The Monocacy Regiment gave all it could to defend its country and friends on that summer day, and they paid a heavy price in blood for that honor. The casualty list included 168 of 256 men and officers engaged. The 14th joined another grim list when Colonel William F. Fox, in his 1889 study, Regimental Losses in the Civil War, named the 14th as one of the 300 fighting regiments of the entire Union Army in recognition of its high battlefield casualties. Captain Harris and other wounded received immediate treatment on the scene, before medical staff evacuated them to area hospitals. The ambulance carrying Harris rolled into Baker's Valley to a modest farmhouse owned by Edward Baker. His daughter, 21-year-old Clementine America Baker, nursed Harris for a few weeks. Once his condition stabilized, medical personnel arranged transportation to a military hospital in Baltimore to complete his recuperation. On December 8th, 1864, Harris mustered out of the military, credited with having fought in 18 battles. He received brevets or honorary ranks of major and lieutenant colonel for the Battle of the Monocacy and his war service. The 14th continued on through the rest of the war and mustered out in June of 1865. Harris had some unfinished business. He headed back to Baker's Valley. He was smitten with the farmer's daughter, Clementine America Baker, and began a courtship with his darling Clementine that ended in their marriage on May 22nd, 1865. The newlyweds made their home in Elizabeth, where Harris received an appointment as postmaster and served in this capacity for about 2 decades. He continued to operate the family grist mill on the Elizabeth River, converting it into a mill for shelling peanuts and grinding cocoa shells. Active in the Grand Army of the Republic, he became a founder of its local post. In 1907, the state of New Jersey erected a battlefield monument commemorating the 14th. You can visit there and see it today. 4 years later, in 1911, Harris died after losing a battle to pneumonia. He was 82. Clementine and 3 daughters survived him. After Clementine passed at about age 90 in 1932, her remains were buried alongside her husband at Evergreen Cemetery in Hillside, New Jersey. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.